Hello, good evening, good day, good afternoon. Nice to see everybody today. I'm very excited to be kicking off this webinar with our colleagues from the UN Volunteers and one from UNICEF as well, Eleonora from UNICEF and Mark from UN Volunteers, who are going to be presenting UNicoins, which is a new prototype for a digital token at the United Nations with a focus on stimulating and supporting collaboration within the system. I'm not going to get into too much of it, but I'm going to leave that to Mark. So maybe Mark and Eleonora, if you guys would like to introduce yourselves in a moment, that would be wonderful. But before I do that, let me just give you an understanding, everybody, of the organization of the day. We're going to start off with the presentation, which should take 15-20 minutes, and then we'll go into some questions, some Q&A, and some discussion about how UNiCoins can apply, where we might see it being applied within the various use cases and opportunities within our various agencies. And then I was thinking we could do a short design exercise using Mural to put some of those things on paper and see what sticks. So that should give us the full hour of our webinar today. Really looking forward to the session. Over to you, Mark and Eleonora.
Great, thank you so much, Gustav. Hello, everyone. Happy to see all of you. My name is Eleonora Gatti. I'm with the UNICEF Office of Innovation, and I'm also one of the members of the UNicoins team as part of the YoungUN network. And today I have my colleague and team member, Mark Liberati, who will introduce himself very shortly. UNiCoins is an idea that was born and incubated within the YoungUN network in 2020, and we have quite a large team representing 12 UN agencies. Most colleagues unfortunately could not be here today, and we, Eleanor and myself and Mark, are representing the team today. And we're very happy to get your feedback and ideas on how UNiCoins tokens could be tested in your agency as well as in the UNIN blockchain group. So over to you, Mark, to kickstart the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eleonora, and good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. It's my pleasure to start this sort of second iteration on our discussion on UNiCoins. First, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Mark Liberati. I currently am serving with the United Nations Volunteer Program in Bonn, Germany, leading the policy pillar, but a proud member of YoungUN and the UNiCoins team. And so for those who may remember, we had presented on UNiCoins our white paper, which was a result of the Reimagine UN Challenge in 2020. We laid out the sort of the conceptual framework that we had worked on in our white paper. And then the next step, based on much of the feedback from colleagues that we had presented with in UNIN, was on really how we could operationalize this. So without further ado, I'll jump into a bit on how we've actually moving this forward. But I think before, just to refresh those colleagues, UNiCoins was a blockchain-based token. The idea was to encourage collaboration between UN entities to optimize that cross-system collaboration. The idea was this is often work that is not recognized, and what doesn't get recognized is often not incentivized. And if we, as an organization, as a system, want more of this cross-system collaboration, thinking about innovative ways to incentivize that. It was also a mechanism to create in the UN system a sort of a circular economy of this time for cross-system collaboration, and sort of allowing for the parties who are contributing to cross-system collaboration across the UN to also be the ones that are the decision makers in how they are budgeting and allocating the resources, the scarce resources that is our own time. So I will now a bit refresh on what was, I think I wanted to give a bit more details, what we had set forth in our white paper. But here was our overall mapping. So what we imagined was, on your left-hand side, you'll see the UNIN blockchain group members, just to sort of imagine it if we were prototyping it within our current group here. Now, Gustav has just sort of been working and facilitating all of these fantastic meetings that we've been having over the course of months. And because of that, has contributed his time to cross-system collaboration. We're all coming from different parts of the United Nations system, but Gustav has been, as his role in facilitation, has been contributing his hours. He, for those hours, could be receiving UNiCoins. Now, once he receives those UNiCoins, he would also be given sort of a lifetime allocation for how much time he's contributed in his lifetime. That never goes away. But what he can also do is he can spend the UNiCoins that he has for things that he cares about. And so he wants to maybe within the UNIN blockchain group, have someone come on to help with drafting of a UN-wide blockchain guidance note, and maybe also work on a webinar series. So these are the things that he wants to then reapply the time that he contributed and let it continue passing that time on to new initiatives so other people can then also accumulate UNiCoins. This is sort of the basis of the circular economy that we're trying to facilitate. So what we've done in our technical prototype to facilitate this is we've made one master UNiCoin wallet. We've capitalized this with about 100,000 UNiCoins, although we could expand or contract that amount. What we imagine here is that the UNIN blockchain group would also then receive a certain allocation of UNiCoins in their wallet. They would have their own wallet, and then that would jumpstart the UNIN blockchain group circular economy of time, so that each time people are contributing to the UNIN blockchain group, those members, once their hours are validated, would receive the UNiCoins commensurate to the hours that they have contributed. Then, once there's a sufficient number of people in the UNIN blockchain group who have received UNiCoins, that then allows for a circulation of the UNiCoins for each of them choosing the activities that they wish to fund, and therefore further increasing the transfers of UNiCoins across the ecosystem. Now, just to sort of explain that in a different view, so the UNiCoins wallet is sort of the master where the UNiCoins are initiated from. So that then is starting to create the transfers out to the different prototypes. So here the UNIN blockchain group would be its own prototype and would be given its own master wallet. Also, we want to sort of work on some of the policies and incentives that we set forth in our white paper, but we would also like to test those. So this is also the opportunity for each prototype to sort of come up with some refined policies of what they would find to be eligible, what work would count, to answer sort of those questions, which would help co-create a more scaled up version. So this is the initial startup transfer. Then from the UNIN master wallet, again, are paid out initially to each user that is contributing their hours. So right now, I'm looking, there's 39 participants. Let's assume that we would make an eligibility criteria that would say participation, active participation in the UNIN blockchain group meetings would count for contributing to the collective efforts. So if that was decided by the group as that would be eligible for UNiCoins, then all of us at the end of this hour would receive one UNiCoin for our participation. Now, once we would have our UNiCoins, let's say we would decide, or a few of us, let's say 5 of us decide we would like to budget our UNiCoins for a project that would require 5 hours, and we want to crowdfund our UNiCoins together, creating that budget of time that we then can decide on how we would spend. And so in the next slide, let's just assume we take that time budget, we've put in 5 hours, and we would like to bring on an innovation specialist for 2 hours and a data scientist for 3 hours for a very specific upgrade to the UNiCoins project. So we would take our time budget, put that in the, we've actually created that budget. We've decided on how we'd like to spend that budget. And then as those collaborators come, the data scientists provide their 3 hours of work, the innovation specialists provide their 2 hours of work, they are then transferred UNiCoins, and as the cycle of the economy continues forward. Now, what we've done from the technical side, we have sort of a three-step, components to our technical design. And I do want to say, being a YoungUN team, we had a budget of 0. This is a volunteer project. It's ultimately about volunteering inside the UN system. So we wanted to see if we could actually walk the talk and produce a prototype with 0 funds. Luckily, on the Rinkeby Ethereum testnet, there is something called a faucet where you can go to and you receive quite a substantial amount of Ethereum if it was on the mainnet, because that has actually a high monetary value. But since it's on the testnet, it's quite easy to get. But that was how we could facilitate it. So we remained on the testnet, which allowed us to have work at 0 cost using the faucet. Then secondly, we had the MetaMask wallet, which is one of the most common wallets, not the only, but it's one of the most common wallets in the Ethereum blockchain space. And this was assumed that at least when we were using it within our own UNicoins group, each user then had a MetaMask wallet. It's an add-on that you can download from the internet, and then that was sort of your bank account, if you wish to think of it like that. The other components are how we created the actual UNiCoins themselves. We originally had an online volunteer who was able to work and actually drive the code. But then we, after doing a bit more research, found it easier to work with an Aragon DAO also on that same testnet. So therefore, we're not incurring any transaction costs as we're spending our testnet Ethereum. So we created the UNiCoins within the Aragon system, and we set it up as a DAO, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. The benefit of a DAO is not only do you create the tokens, but the tokens overall have an ability to be used in a voting structure. So if we were to make collective decisions, we can also use those UNiCoins that the users would hold as a mechanism to sort of make collective decisions and have a clean record captured on the blockchain as to those decisions. Then that was sort of the master wallet. As I said, we wanted to then make separate wallets for each prototype, as we were imagining maybe a few entities, UN agencies or sub-agencies, sub-entities, Union blockchain itself, potentially could then prototype and also have some flexibility, as I said, to decide a bit on some of the policies and ways of working and incentive structures that we wanted to sort of test out of the white paper. So this was then set up in a Gnosis safe, which is it's called a multi-signature safe. You can think of it like a joint bank account. And multi-signature is just how many signatures have to be signed off from that joint bank account. As your wallet is also not just your bank account, but you can think of it like DocuSign. You're also signing when you're agreeing to transactions, so you're approving that. So each prototype could set up their own rules as to how many people would be actually controlling that joint bank account. We imagine this to be sort of the administrators of the prototype, and as well as the number of signatures required needed to make a transaction. Obviously, the lower number makes it much easier. However, you want to also build some safeguards in the system so that the account is integrity is maintained. What we've also been working with is reaching out to some online volunteer UI UX developers who could assist us with actually building a very simple user interface, as that was also some of the feedback we've received, is people would really like to have a very clean and simple, intuitive interface. And we couldn't agree more. In the Reimagined UN Challenge. One of the other finalists was Connecta, also a Young UN team that actually created a fantastic website, similarly based on the online volunteering platform. So we look to that as inspiration, and we're hoping to take that within our next steps. I will now turn over to my colleague, Eleonora, who will walk us through some of the benefits we think this could bring to the UN blockchain group in general, and start the conversation going into that mural. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to questions afterwards. Over.
Thank you, Mark. So some of the benefits for all of you, for UNI and blockchain group members. So first of all, we think that this is a very exciting opportunity for all of us to learn more about tokens, digital tokens, and how this new technology can be utilized for our UN work. And this is an opportunity for all of you that would like to take part to this, to shape this particular token for collaboration for the UN. And just also want to mention that when this innovation came as one of the finalists in the UN Innovation Challenge, received high praise from the Committee on Management, and as one of the technologies that will be really supporting the futures of work of the UN. So the senior management in the UN is very excited about this technology, and they're looking forward to see the next steps. Second, access to volunteer hours to support your work. Mark just showed Connecta, and through that platform, if you have tested it before, you will know that you're able to find lots of colleagues that are donating their extra hours to support projects within the UN and also for other agencies. So it's a great opportunity to tap into a platform like Connecta and to use the tokens to really track the amount of hours that colleagues have been contributed to your project and vice versa. Then third is a really learning opportunity for all of us to collectively use and iterate an internal UN blockchain solution. And then lastly, also showcasing how the UN blockchain group could bring value to the overall UN system by testing a real blockchain solution. So these are some of the opportunities and benefits that we see, but I'm sure that you will be able to see many more when we go into the Q&A session. Next slide, Mark. So this slide shows some of the technical next steps that the UNicoins team will be implementing in the next couple of months. And we really would like to open the opportunity to all of you to be part of the wider team and to be involved in really bringing to life some of these technical next steps together with the Young UN network and also with the UN Volunteer Online that have been joining this group and have contributed to write the paper and to implement the wallet that you have heard so far. So really looking forward to the conversation, and I will pop in the chat the links to our paper and also ways to get in touch with the team. So thank you so much, and we're happy to open for questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eleonora. So yeah, curious to hear what everyone thinks of the project. Maybe we can stop sharing the screen and we can let everybody come onto the into gallery view so we can see everyone. Even though everyone has their cameras off, I'm sure it will make it more easy for us to identify who wants to ask a question. So anyone in the room interested in asking an initial question? So I see Marco just asked a question. Would you like to ask that out loud, Marco? Come and join us.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the presentation. I just wonder whether you consider other blockchain application, like blockchain platform, rather than application other than Ethereum. I'm a bit concerned about platform based on proof of work, and if others are popping out there, maybe will be more environmentally friendly, because after all, I think it's something that we should consider when we're trying to implement something based on a technology that is energy intensive, to say the least, at least in some implementation. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we've actually, this was a real consideration. We wanted to address this directly. On Ethereum is moving to a proof of stake model, so that there is a merger that has been voted on by the Ethereum community, and they are going to be, the proof of stake will dramatically reduce the energy intensivity. However, this is not, I agree with you, this would probably not be voted best practice. There are some other emerging chains, as well as ones that are offsetting. So ones that are already looking to reduce their energy, others that are building in offsets already as part of the transactional costs. And I think there's even other new, really innovative models that are using, if they're going to be doing things like proof of work, that it could be training, AI models that could be actually helping climate scientists, better and make an analysis, for example. So there's some really innovative areas in the space. But I think that was one of the things we would like to co-create, is also, like, as I said, we were working with a budget of 0, and so we chose the testnet just to have something, and we were making very few transactions because it really was very low transaction intensive at the moment. But if you were to scale this, we would, and it work within the UN, we would want to make sure this was as was respecting the mandate of the organization in general. So on that also, I would address the question I see Eric has raised, which is also which blockchains were fundamental. On the fundamental side, I would also say that, it's what is fascinating about blockchain is it can bring disparate parties together in consensus. I find it very much a metaphor for the United Nations. And in thinking around cross-system collaboration, we still are often, not always, siloed entities, sort of under this larger umbrella. And what it technically does very well is allow those silos to somehow remain some independence, but it binds them with the consensus protocol and allows each one its own. There's no one is under. It's very decentralized, right? The network is created by the consortium of the nodes, if you will, of the entities. So that I think is the general trend of decentralization that I think fits very well within the UN model. And addressing again the energy point, there are much less energy intensive mechanisms that can be done, especially if you're looking at having more of a closed network. Although I think it's worth thinking around what this could mean in a more expanded arena, really opening up to a broader base of stakeholders.
There are some other blockchains.
Eleanor wants to make some points as well.
Yeah, there are some good blockchains as well, like Polygon, for example, which have a lower energy footprint. So there's always an opportunity, especially considering you're currently deployed on a test net. There's opportunities to explore other blockchains. There's another question which I missed, which was by Famil. Famil, would you like to come in and quickly ask your question, which you asked earlier on in the session?
Hi, colleague. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. Hi, colleague. Thank you very much. Very nice presentation. Very nice project. I actually attended the first one when Mark presented also with Eleonora. Great project. I was wondering more about the governance. I know that you're going to build it on Aragon. So that's for the DAO, how it will be managed. But how the governance in general will work, like one coin, whoever has more coins will have the more power to vote, or it's another system. And then how the one UNiCoin is equal. Is it going to be always a fixed price kind of that, like one UNiCoin is fixed to 1 hour time, or it can change based on the project? Thank you. How do you see, Mark, the same thing?
Yeah, and then I'll push it over to Eleanor for some thoughts on this. The idea was to make it very universal. So at 1 hour of time is sort of a value that we all understand, and it doesn't differentiate between us. So the idea was that one UNiCoin would be fixed at 1 hour. 1 hour of time is also non-inflationary, so it always maintains its value. It's always worth the same. On the governance part, the way we establish it currently was that all of the prototypes, all UNicoin holders would basically have one UNicoin would be one vote. So the number of the more you've contributed, the more votes you get. This would be something I would be very interested in really collectively thinking around. It was just the way we wanted to set it up at the moment so that we could allow different prototypes. Let's say we had 3 prototypes, multiple users in there. They all could collectively make a decision of the master prototype if we were to say, what direction should we take overall? So that was a bit the initial thinking. Although looking forward, you could imagine those time budgets. Let's say 10 of us come together and we each put in 2 UNicoins, and we're basically effectively creating a project. We have a very complicated project management structure in the UN. This could be a very agile way of doing it, that our UNicoins are also our votes in how we decide on how that project is functioning, who we're going to be choosing to take on those tasks, how we're allocating our internal budget of those 10 or 20 hours that we sort of budgeted for some initiative that we want to work on together. So this all could be very nicely fit into sort of the different levels of decision making, because it does allow for voting mechanisms based on your contributions. But it would be definitely something we'd like to explore further. But I'd like to turn over to Eleanor. I'm sure she has a lot of thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, thank you, Famil. I think this is a very important question, and we had lots of discussions internally also with colleagues that were testing UNicoins last year. And I think just to add to what Mark said is also the fact that the same way when you're, for example, devising a TOR, you're making an assessment of how many hours you think that the person would take to conduct a certain, to do a certain translation of a document, for example, or to write a certain type of document. So there is an aspect also of pre-assessing the number of hours that a task would take to prevent anyone in the system to abuse UNicoins, and then so therefore to claim that they maybe spend 100 hours on translating one page, right, from one language to another. So I think that would not be possible, because whenever there is a task, there's always a pre-agreement on a maximum amount of hours that task in particular would take, and that is agreeable by all the members that have got voting rights. And we feel that this is going to prevent exploitation of UNicoins in terms of like overclaiming them. But definitely a topic for discussion. Thanks.
That's great. Yeah, no, it's a really, really interesting topic as well, the representative value of a token and how that representative value changes, and then how that value is governed and ensured that there is consensus in that process of governance, where the blockchain can handle the technological consensus, but the actual human consensus that sits around value is an interesting one. There's a couple other questions. Mark Belinsky, would you like to quickly come in and ask the question that you posted in the chat?
Thanks, Gustav. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's a plan to be an endowment around this set of coins, basically around the use case of I want to take Gustav and utilize him for 20 hours and pay that into the UNDP CDO budget. Would that be possible? And if so, how to make that work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. That was a bit, I mean, that came out in thinking around, now what we wanted to stay in was the volunteer space, because it's a little less regulated in the UN system. So often people are working beyond their TOR, they're working in extra hours. And so that was the space we kept in, just because that's easier from a policy perspective. However, you're totally correct. This could be integrated more with our HR policies in sort of having these agile detail assignments, very short-term surge, and a way between agencies to reconcile accounts. Very possible. It's just that requires then a lot more engagement with with all the HR structures. So we, because of that, we were more just looking to work into the volunteer space as how we can sort of incentivize and make this work in the areas that are less constrained by our policies and procedures. But hopefully that could showcase the potential this could mean within that more regulated space inside our system.
It's interesting to think of how, because one of the challenges ultimately is that we all only have a certain amount of time, and so if certain amounts of time are being taken up by our salaries, certain amounts of time are being taken up by UNicoins. How does that work at a budgeting and accounting level for the various teams? Now over to Nagina. You had your hand up for a little while. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm still commuting, so sorry for the noise around. So for us at Unity, we're trying also to, which question may be related but unrelated. So we're trying to mint NFTs and fundraise through different cryptocurrencies. And then we go into the barrier that there is no internal policy or procedure to accept crypto donations. And I know some other agencies are doing that. And I was wondering if anyone can share with us policy or internal procedures which we can adopt under the mutual recognition internally too, because we are really like can't overcome that barrier. We have the resources, we have the potential donors, but we still can't accept it in cryptocurrency. So that's a plea for help if anyone can share what they have internally. Thank you.
I don't know if that's directly to the UNicoins team, but I think UNICEF have done a lot of work on accepting cryptocurrencies. Their guide is a great initial. Their blockchain guide is a great initial document to look at, and then I'm sure if you get in touch with Sunito or the team out at UNICEF, or even Eleonora, who can probably get you in touch with the right people, they can share some details with you.
Yeah, we're in touch with Sunita and her team, but I was thinking maybe other agencies also having something.
Currently, UNICEF is the only organization that accepts cryptocurrency as a donation. But as the question is not directly related to UNicoins, I'm going to move on to Aaron and ask Aaron to come in and present his question.
Thanks, Gustav. Yeah, excellent presentation. Really like how you guys thought of the various angles. So my question was sort of partially answered with the answer that you gave for the previous question by Mark. So essentially, it's about looking for cases where the accumulation of UNicoins or the related badges could be exchanged for some sort of real world value. By real world value, I mean it could be within the UN ecosystem, like the integration of the HR policies, as you mentioned, or something else, maybe outside. So the reason why I'm asking this is the coin itself may not incentivize people to really take part in the project unless it has some sort of value. So that's my question.
So just to be clear, you're talking about effectively the tradability. How does that coin actually drive a certain, how does it hold a certain value?
Yes, I mean, by tradability, I'm not implying trading with other cryptos, but I'm implying trading with something else, anything else,
physical.
Which physical, digital, whatever, but or it can be, I mean, I did briefly go through the UNicoin white paper. There was some mention about just a minute, there was some mention about external redemption, short-term possibility of short-term assignments being nominated for that, and then so on and so forth. So these are real world values in some sense, and ultimately that should drive the adoption basically of UNicoin and then interest in UNicoin. So this is my questions to the team. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, in the white paper we had, which we didn't get into here in the prototype so much because That would be sort of in our next steps, is setting up the badges. But based on your lifetime accumulation, you would get certain badges. And the badges would be effectively going up levels. So it allows for sort of an agile ability to be promoted. And the way we had imagined it was originally you could just offer your time. And then once you accumulated enough UNiCoins, you would go to the next level where you could actually start proposing projects. And if you went up the next level, you could clear, it's following very much the UN logic of delegation of authority. So you basically receive more authority as you go up level. So you would propose, then you could clear, then you could approve, and then you could start being the manager and take on more administrative roles. So that was what we had laid out in the white paper, but it is something to validate in a prototype if that is the incentive that people want. Or if you're suggesting, do you want other more small tokens of appreciation that would be more physical, but still maintaining sort of a volunteerism component. So I think that's a very live discussion. What we went for was more, we wanted to appeal to people's desire to contribute more, but to take on higher roles. But it's definitely something I think worth testing and co-creating and getting more feedback on if that is actually attractive or if something else should be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Also adding to what Mark just said, we had some initially, when we were ideating, we had some sessions with also HR colleagues, and they had some ideas in terms of how UNiCoins could be helpful to HR in particular. So, for example, if we were able going forward to have the amount of UNiCoins and badges that you accumulate included in your performance evaluation, that would also show that you have contributed a certain number of hours to intra-agency work that that you might not have, other colleagues might not have done. And so if that is taken into account officially in the HR systems, then potentially that would help you with your career, in the UN. But of course, this would require some policy changes in HR. But definitely some UN agencies are very interested. Like UNICEF is looking into this kind of policy changes as well. And some other UN agencies were also keen, to see how UNiCoins could be, and badges especially, could be incorporated into performance evaluations. So that would bring, in a way, career, I don't want to call it benefits, but would help colleagues in their furthering their careers within the system. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Cool. So we have another question by Gustavo Dami. Maybe I can invite Gustavo to come in and ask the question.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. So the question was in relation to making UNiCoins maybe a little bit more attractive, even to foreign investors to participate on this project, because sometimes a certain UA agency, they have more budget than others, and maybe, to be fair with those who have little budget or little staff, they can lend UNiCoins to move forward a project. Otherwise, sometimes many projects, they never move forward because lack of investment or lack of staff. But this way would be maybe a way to try to help between the different agencies, and or even from a private investor, instead of giving contributions, they will invest directly in UNiCoins, who can be translated in the time for staff. That was just if you were thinking on that.
Yeah, no, I love this question. So I was smiling. If you look in the white paper in the footnote, we did try to give it like an accounting value. So we just sort of said, as an average, you could use a P3 salary, just to sort of give it a sense of what is the value. Not to say that it can be exchanged for that value, but that you're just using it as an accounting mechanism. We also had initially some really interesting discussions with, as part of the Reimagine UN Challenge, one of the dragons was from the Foreign Office in the UK. And I think they were very keen on looking at, maybe a UN project would be capitalized with donor funds, but also 10% would be from UNicoins, basically that the system kind of comes together and brings their internal resources to bear. I think that's very interesting mechanism also, and could be attractive. We could also then looking at taking that to donors, and they would have to purchase it, so that basically you can either purchase it as a donor or you earn it through working. And I think another thing to consider is, you said lend, but the potential power here is that the UN would actually be controlling the creation of the token. Unlike, the UN cannot just make dollars or yen or euro, but it could print as many UNicoins as it wants. It would have to be a bit based on how many hours are truly available, but it would not necessarily need to lend in a way, but there would need to be an accounting mechanism to make sure that the value is maintained. So I think that could be this would be a very interesting part in co-creation as well, because I think there's a lot of really innovative mechanisms to use it. Over.
Wonderful. So I think that brings us to the end of the question. So what I'm curious in asking now, maybe just to see what people think. Does anyone have any ideas of how UNicoins, or whether UNicoins might be able to be applied within their agencies or within their work? I'm curious to see what maybe put your hands up if you think, yes, this will definitely work. We can make this happen. Or in the reactions, if you put a hand up, that means yes, definitely work. If you put the thumbs up, then that's kind of, I still have questions. That's what I'm looking for. All right. Cool. So there's people still have questions. Curious to see what people are thinking. Eric, you've posted a few times in the chat. I'm curious to hear what you're thinking about the UNicoins project.
Yes, I cannot turn on my video, but because the host has not. But I believe the question that Lisa was posing is what actually blockchain capability is fundamental for making UNicoins work. So that's more the kind of, do we need blockchain for this or not? And but the more you talk about it, the more I can see that there are certain functionalities from blockchain which are useful here. And then from a very practical point of view, just as a UN employee, I can see this working because I would love to have a list of people in the UN with their expertise and interest and so forth, from where I can pick expertise from, let's say 1 hour, and maybe we can even divide the type of support that we, whether it's just that we can call them in for half an hour, or that we really want to write them a piece of work in 2 hours or whatsoever. But I could see this happening. And Gustavo was mentioning even from the private sector. I think that's an interesting one. But I believe the UN should not be positioned as a kind of consultancy agency. But it could, on the other hand, lead to some fruitful collaborations with private sector, because if they really want to work with us on the SDGs together. Over to you.
Yeah, just to address some of those points on the so why the other blockchains, I think was also asked. So one of the winner actually of the Reimagine UN Challenge, UNicoins came in second with Connecta, but was the UN Digital ID initiative, which is actually now being implemented with a few agencies. And it is built underneath on a blockchain, because as I said, all of our agencies, they have their own ERP systems and they're not connected. And what the UN Digital ID system will do is connect them together. So ideally, it would be good to work with the UN Digital ID, and we've had some good discussions on how we could integrate integrate with them. So that was a bit on how we could think around this, actually taking this forward. We just wanted to sort of prototype this to showcase what is the possibility, because once UN Digital ID really starts rolling out across the UN system, you will quite easily now open up more possibility for having a wallet inside that UN Digital ID that's already a functionality because it's on Hyperledger. And we actually explored working with Hyperledger. We met with their team called Firefox, but their testnet just is not as developed at the moment, and that was why we sort of chose that option. But we were still exploring ways to showcase how this could integrate with UN Digital ID, and then also it's still worth thinking around how this could be very external. Like I said, in bringing on volunteers from the external world to contribute to the SDGs for a few hours, very similar to what, I'm biased here, but the UN Volunteer Program does with the online volunteering platform. So I think those are all things we've been discussing, and we would really like to sort of crowd solve those further together.
Very cool. I think there was an interesting use case there, which is having that kind of cross UN roster of expertise, which is kind of the other side of the challenge. Famil has his hand up. Come and join us, my friend.
Yeah, the Mark mentioned the right direction. I think you mentioned all the online volunteering is the first thing that I think that directly will work in our organization. So Mark definitely knows about this more. But second thing, I think that this is a project that's not about Eleonora and Mark. This is like all UN. We need to come up with ideas how we can use it in different projects. We need to come up we can use there or here. The one idea I think that a very well works is a badges. That's also you thought about that one. Like for example, Salesforce has this Trailblazer platform where people are dying to get the one badge and then show off that they have this type of mountaineer, adventure, ranger type of badge, and they're spending hours and hours of work on the certain project just to get a one level up on the points, so they can accumulate points and then get the badge. So it's a digital world these days, right? Once it starts, I think it will be more interesting, and that's a very good point also. And Mark mentioned inside of the different organizations, there are volunteer type of work you can put in, and then it can be mentioned in the performance evaluation. That's also a very good idea.
Yeah, I mean, just to answer that, absolutely. I think we definitely would like to expand the team and to test it in as many agencies as possible, and also to adapt the UNiCoin backend in a way that is compatible with all the different systems. Like for example, we had a conversation with the WHO innovation team, and they were very keen on having this particular token compatible with Microsoft Teams, because they felt that colleagues every day are working on are using Microsoft Teams, and so they wanted to, their idea, for example, was to create a Microsoft Team app that through which you could use UNiCoin. So that of course is a really good idea. At the moment, we haven't been able to develop it yet because we don't have a developer in the team that was able to develop that particular app, but we would like to expand the team and the functionality as much as possible. So
I was thinking that maybe in the Aragon project, Mark, already you can distribute these coins at the different agencies. We can come up with an idea, and then based on idea, we can submit for the funding, because without funding, it will never work. You have a developer, you have a security issues, you have a team of marketing, you have the design. So it's a lot of budget needed for that. But maybe the first step could be that in the Aragon, in the DAO platform, we can already start in which organization we want to start. We want to vote for which project, and then we can collectively apply for the funding.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. So if we use Aragon, create a set of proposals of different use cases, and then get people to vote on those use cases, and we can share that in Union with the blockchain group, and then use that as a way to start crowdsourcing the use case design.
Well, I mean, we would be more than happy to start a Union blockchain prototype and start allocating the users to their MetaMask wallets, the UNicoins, that they could then use to vote on proposals in the Aragon DAO.
Yeah, I mean, the question is whether you were doing a Unin prototype or just creating something that is for the network, right? Because this is a UNicoins prototype that would be supported by Unin. But I mean, I think that's more of a what's supposed to putting it. That's more of a kind of getting lost in the detail. I think that the idea of having a place where we can get the use cases proposed and then using that as a way to get people to get everybody engaged in the process of, one, being part of a decentralized autonomous organization, two, deciding on what use cases to work on together, and then three, actually being able to then allocate funding to those use cases and then drive them forward. I mean, that's a fantastic little opportunity for us as a community, and I'd be curious to hear from the group if people here are interested in being part of that. Before though, let's ask Marco to join us. Marco, come and ask your question, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just worried about one particular aspect, which is, it seems that UNiCoin is very dependent on a few applications that, I mean, namely you have Ethereum first, then you have MetaMask wallet, then the Aragon things. And I think it will be quite challenging whether this rolls out to, like I say, a significant scale, to then be in a way dependent on these platforms. And this is not a theoretical problem. Ethereum has split one time already. It will most likely split again, and other platforms have experienced similar issues. So I wonder if, while the project to me seems really, really good as an idea, whether tying it to a specific technology and a specific implementation could actually backfire if, for example, the network, the mainnet, goes in a direction that the UN maybe does not agree. So let's say that the proof of stake that has been in the works for 7 years, let's say it doesn't happen. And then we've made a lot of work and we're stuck on this platform. Whereas perhaps if we don't assume that UN entities are mutually distrusting parties, we could just create a similar system that works with badges and has a wallet, but doesn't need a blockchain, because in the end, they're all in the same system and you know who's who, and identity verification will not be a problem as well. Thank you.
No, it's very valid. I mean, we chose, as I said, it wasn't that this was the best option that we felt on all criteria. It was we had to deal with a very small budget, and the Ethereum ecosystem is the most advanced and has the most tools at no cost on their test nets. So that was why we went with that. As I said, the UN Digital ID, which is actually, if you're going to scale it, would be the ideal partner, because that actually will be implemented across the UN systems. That will be our new digital identities. And it will effectively create a blockchain consortium between all the UN entities, and it's on Hyperledger. Now, Hyperledger can integrate with Ethereum. However, Ethereum, even the testnet, unless you're going to expand it, wouldn't make as much sense. You could do it on, they have their own wallet they're creating. So it could be integrated at a very scaled. But what we wanted to use the prototypes for wasn't to stick to any technology at all. It was actually to learn what we like or don't like about these technologies, to build better technical specifications is what you would actually take forward on a scaled up version. What policies, as I said, what are the incentives that we found really incentivizing, right? Which ones did not pan out in the way we conceived it in the white paper? What are the new use cases that we see it in our agencies? And really, I think in the best practice of blockchain, really creating that decentralized UN, which I think Union Blockchain Group already represents, and building that collective intelligence so that we're co-creating something together and not just having sort of a centralized structure that we often have in these sort of hierarchical project structures that we work with now. So that was more.
Sounds great. Now we have 5 minutes left. I realized we missed the design session, but I thought the conversation was going so well that it was a great opportunity to just share ideas here, and a few ideas have actually come up in terms of ways forward. As we have those 5 minutes left, Mark, Eleonora, are there any last things that you'd like to share with the group about your future plans on UNicoins? Or kind of expectations from the group?
Yeah, we would. I mean, I think Eleonora pitched it quite well. I mean, on our sort of the back end, we have some, as I said, we're been able to pool some online volunteers to help with potentially building a better user interface, and also looking at building in that badge functionality. But I think what would be more critical at this point would not just be new members, but really someone that wants to, or a group of people that wish to really participate in a prototype to test out these theories that we laid out in the white paper, but we want to really test them, see how it really works, how it feels, and then maybe iterate that further so that what we're building is really co-created by all of us in that sense. So I think that's what would be my view of a great next step. Over, Eleanor.
Yeah, I agree, Mark. Definitely, we would like to really do a practical test. Like, for example, next week we've got a session with a group of, I think, 10 UN agencies that are participating in a women's empowerment program. It's called Emerge. And so we are looking, for example, to test UNicoins with this professional training program for women's UN staff members, and see how UNicoins could be used by the participants of that particular professional program, and in particular how the members could use UNicoins for their assignments. So this is a test case. And we're very happy about it, but we're definitely looking to have as many pilots as possible, and we can very quickly, just in a matter of a second, we can create a master wallet for one initiative, one project that you would like to test UNicoins for, and we can assign some particular members to that wallet, and so coins can, an initial amount of coins can be transferred. And we will be very happy to do that with some of you, or all of you that are interested in them and can see a real test case for your organization and your day-to-day job. So happy to do that. Thanks.
Awesome. So in terms of people reaching out to organize or to talk about possible use case, would you like them to get in touch with me first, or would you like to put your emails in the chat and then they can reach out directly to you both?
Maybe it'd be good to put to you, and we could be in copy. I think that would just centralize, maybe that's just centralize it a bit, so that we can have. But I will definitely put my email in the chat, but I think it'd be best to channel this with your union. But Eleonora, how do you feel?
Yeah, definitely. Now, I'm wondering whether we could create a very simple Google chart, Word document, and then colleagues can put the name of the project there and their contact, and then maybe give I don't know, 2 weeks time or 10 days to and then we could have a session with all those interested in particular. But I think it would be great if you, Gustav, if the requests are channeled. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Mark and Eleonora, for the time and attention you've given to creating this presentation and giving everybody an opportunity to learn about UNicoins. And thank everyone who has who proposed questions or asked questions inside of in the session today. Very grateful for all the attention you've had, and for those who haven't been asking questions as well, for the time you've spent listening in today. Wonderful to see so many friendly faces like Mark, like Stella, Zoe, and so many others. And I'm really looking forward to the next session that we organize together. Hopefully we'll be having, UNICEF come and talk to us about the work they did with their NFT release. but we'll let you know soon enough. If anybody has any interesting projects that you'd like to share within the blockchain group, please get in touch with me so that we can organize some time together, because it's really important for us to show the work that's being done within the United Nations on blockchain technologies. Have a wonderful day, evening. I don't know where you are in the world, and I do hope whatever next hours are wonderful, and the great starts of the weekend. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much. Good day. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Thanks all.